So I'm reading this really great book by Jonathan Sacks called The Home We Build Together. And it is such a beautiful book. As I'm reading it, I feel like it has been resonating with things that I have been feeling about race relations. And I want to talk a little bit about the fight against any type of supremacy. And this is going to be a hard topic because as an African American woman, I have my own challenges as I've dealt with racism and white supremacy for most of my life. But I do feel God called me to a place of grace and love for all people. And then I am going to share some truths I've noticed in my experiences, not as a way to incite bitterness, but just to give just some background on what I've observed in race relations throughout my life. And I feel like, even though I know my ancestors were brought here to America against their will, to be enslaved and treated in such dehumanizing, violent ways, and I will never forget that story. And I will never be silent about that story. And I will never stop teaching about that story. I do feel God is calling me to talk about this from a place of agape love. And the reason why I like this book, The Home We Build Together, is it seems to be a really good perspective on fighting against any form of supremacy. You know, as Black people went through so much in this country, and as we had to overcome so much and heal from the scars of our captivity and our discrimination and oppression through the years of Reconstruction and then Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement and all of that, that fight has created a desire sometimes in us to go beyond just seeking equality because we are still hurting. I know I am. Maybe I'm alone in that. And so sometimes our fight for equality begins to evolve into a fight for supremacy. And we've seen that over the past years as we have sought to try to find theories and philosophies and frameworks to explain our existence, our experience, our emotions, our feelings, to explain what is still very wrong with the systems here in America. So I say that and I put that aside. On the other hand, another form of supremacy, which has always been there since the beginning, has caused white people to really struggle as that supremacy has begun to wane. And just like Black people have felt oppressed because our freedom was taken from us, white people think they are being oppressed because their superiority or supremacy is being taken from them. Oppression, people feel oppressed when something they value has been taken from them and they cannot get it back. And the weight of that loss begins to shape how they see their experience in the world. And so we have felt oppressed as Black people because we've always been placed in situations where we're dehumanized. Now, white people say they're feeling oppressed because with hiring practices, affirmative action, with just America's efforts to try to level the playing field so that everyone has access to equal opportunity. White people feel oppressed because those opportunities used to be mainly relegated to them. But by America creating legislation that says no longer will you be the first to be considered for these positions, but we will open up the door so all people can be considered and all people be given the opportunity. It used to be a time where the only qualification you needed to be successful was to be white. But America has sought to say, no, we got to look at people's qualifications and consider those and give them opportunity. It's kind of like when Biden's press secretary was hired, she was accused of being a DEI hire. Ketanji was made Supreme Court Justice. People called her a DEI hire. But if you put their qualifications up next to, say, Ketanji's qualifications up next to the other justices, she actually had more experience than just about every justice. Or when you put Karine Jean-Pierre's qualifications up to the new press secretary, it doesn't even compare. She's definitely got a lot more experience, and yet she's called a DEI hire. Or when you put, say, Kennedy's qualifications as a healthcare person up against, say, someone like Ben Carson, and his qualifications as a neurosurgeon. I mean, Kennedy he's never worked in the medical field at all, ever. He has no experience in the medical field. But yet, if Ben Carson had been chosen by anyone to serve in such a high capacity, he would have been considered a DEI hire, because the qualification is not about degrees and experience, it's about whiteness. And but America has been fighting this fight to try to distance itself from that stigma, where people are placed in positions not because of their qualifications, but by their whiteness. And it has been trying to distance itself from closing the door on people of color for these high-level positions, simply because in the past they've been rejected because of the color of their skin, no matter what degrees they had. And so I'm trying to figure out what is the best way forward for us as a people. Again, I share these things in no way to make my life and experience the center of this conversation, but I share my story just so you can, in case there's someone out there who may not believe or understand any more information of what it's like to be in this world where you're constantly questioned. No matter what your experience has been, just the color of your skin makes people doubt your expertise. Some years ago, I was working in a predominantly white university, and my bosses were great. This is not a slight against them, but I had a coworker who was not my boss, not my supervisor. She was not even really in my particular department, but she was in the vicinity. And she really did not like my presence there. She was constantly questioning my presence and my expertise there. But I had finished a project, and it was suggested that I let her review it because she did have some expertise in the project I had just done. I was nervous because I knew she didn't quite like my presence in the space. But I gave it to her to review, and she agreed to look it over, and then she was ready to talk. And so we met about it, and she begins to just list all the things wrong with the project. The only issue was that everything she listed that was wrong, I had actually done. So then I began to say, well, has she read the project? And so as she's talking, I just stopped her. I said, have you read the project? She didn't answer that question. She said, well, I just want to know if you've read the project, because the things you're saying are actually in the project. If you could read it, you'd see that we're there. Have you read the project? She said, no. I said, well, how do you critique something you've never read? But see, in her mind, she assumes she's Black. She's made mistakes. There's no way she could have done this right because Black people aren't smart enough. So I, as the white woman, I'm going to correct it right at the bat. And everything she told me to do, I had already done. And that's not the first time that has happened to me, right? Where your presence is discounted simply because of the color of your skin. And your expertise, your background are not considered. Shout out to all those who are free from that type of thinking if you're a white person. But this country is still filled with white people who are still trapped by this thought that Black people are inferior. And we must fight for not our equality, but we must fight for our superiority. We can't have any more Black presidents. We can't have any more Supreme Court justices. We can't have all these brown people running things because they're getting out of their place in society. And the frustration of that, like my coworker became very frustrated with me because she was not able to be superior to me. And so it felt like oppression. But this book, The House We Built Together, gives another perspective.